So upsetting.
You're gonna get me in trouble tonight.
I am really
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Taves. I am the event coordinator here at McValley Robinson Booksellers and the one person standing between you all and Kate Bowler. Rest assured, I am keenly aware I'm the least interesting person on stage this evening, so I will not take up too much of your time. I just have a few very quick notes. The first is that before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that McValley Robinson Booksellers is located here in Treaty 1 territory. That is, of course, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. In addition, McValley Robinson itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Roostertown. We are completely delighted to see so many of you out here tonight, both here and virtually and over in our travel alcove. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for your forbearance.
Why are you all here?
We are here, of course, to celebrate the Winnipeg launch of Have a Beautiful, Terrible Day by Kate Bowler. And of course, Field Notes for the Wilderness, Practices for an Evolving Faith by Sarah Bessey.
Tuesday!
So I will be back at the end with some incredibly thrilling notes about how you can get books signed, where you can get signed books, all those details, purchase procedure, everything like that. So please do wait for that. The only thing I will put in your head right now is that at the close of the event, we will ask you all to remain in place for just one moment while we safely escort Kate and Sarah from this area. There'll then be a moment of beautiful chaos and we'll get everything lined up. Now for the event itself, I'm just going to ramble at you for around 2 minutes, and then I'm going to turn things over to our very, very special guests. But before we do, I would also like to express our incredible gratitude to Convergent Books, the Crown Publishing Group, and of course, Penguin Random House of Canada for making these books a reality, and for making this evening a reality as well. Now, to the books in question. Have a Beautiful, Terrible Day is a collection of witty, honest, and wise spiritual reflections that invite readers to embrace the bad, not just the good. From the 3-time New York Times bestselling author of Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lies I've Loved. Packed with bite-sized reflections and action-oriented steps to help you get through the day, be it good, bad, or totally mediocre. This is a devotional for the rest of us, which is to say the people who don't have magical lives that always work out for the best.
It's so much better in your voice, John. It's like late night radio DJ goes meditations. I love it. Continue more. As you were, John. As you were.
And the rest will be performed in the voice of Donald Duck. Winnipeg's own Kate Bowler is the best-selling author of Everything Happens for a Reason, No Cure for Being Human, Good Enough, We will get through this, I promise. The Lives We Actually Have, Blessed, and The Preacher's Wife, and hosts the popular podcast, Everything Happens. A Duke University professor, she earned a Master's in Religion from Yale Divinity School and a PhD at Duke University. Field Notes for the Wilderness is a nurturing and hopeful collection of practices to help an emerging generation of Christians reconnect to their faith, find inner healing, and build spiritual community. From Glennon Doyle's favorite faith writer and the New York Times bestselling author of Jesus Feminist and editor of A Rhythm of Prayer. No less an authority than someone named Kate Bowler has said, for all of us who are bruised by the faithful but want to keep our faith, this book is faithful without being pious, useful without being bossy. This is for all who need to be reintroduced to a spirituality full of grace, mercy, and love. We are so delighted that Sarah could fly in for this event. Sarah Bessey is the author or editor of 5 books. She also leads Evolving Faith, a conference and online community for people who are reimagining their faith with hope. She lives in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, with her husband and their 4 children. Please give a wildly, inappropriately raucous Winnipeg welcome to Kate Bowler and Sarah.
Being at the finale with you all is so wonderful and surreal. Also, that John just disappears behind a placard. You know that he also ran the night shift at the 7-Eleven near my high school. And so we have gone all the way back, all the way. Sarah has been my spectacular, gorgeous friend for such a long time. We have been compatriots in absurdity.
Yes.
And the fact that I get to be like, hey, this is my gorgeous community that I love so much. Walking around, it was like, hey, you played cello for my wedding. I hope well. I don't know. We're not sure. Friends from youth group, friends who taught me Sunday school, friends who have loved me in the worst and the best and the in-between. So it feels dumb and fantastic to be among you. Thank you for standing for now such a long time. Only Kurt is tall enough for this, and he's behind that bookshelf. So thank you guys.
Well, thank you for inviting me and letting me be part of all of this.
Winnipeg is kind of the best.
Winnipeg is absolutely the best.
Yeah, it really is. It genuinely is.
It is. I lived here in the late 80s through the early 90s. And it was so good to be back. I absolutely love it. And I love being able to see like your spaces and your people.
Yeah.
And all the things. It's nice because sometimes it can feel kind of like you get in a lane and you miss like everything else in each other's lives. And so this is wonderful.
Yeah, I come back and I complain about the lights on the perimeter every time. And that's the ministry I bring.
Listen,
So,
I've already been griping about wind show.
yeah,
We're all set. Well, I'm really excited because we are here to talk about your incredible new book. And I mean, just book after book after book that has meant so much to so many of us who find ourselves more on that slower path or the losing side of life at times.
Yeah.
And yet this is one of your ones that's more kind of in that devotional or you know, blessings. I know some people have referred to as like a modern day psalmist, which feels very like
Sure.
yeah, that's right. She complains a lot. There's a lot of complaints as far as I can tell.
bring back Lamentations.
And on the 5th day of her woe,
Make imprecatory psalms great again. So my question for you was actually to ask what led you to writing this book in particular at this moment in time? What was it that kind of motivated or led you down that path of wanting to write this sort of book?
oh, well, I guess for a second I kind of thought I stuck the landing on tragedy because I was doing okay for a minute. And then I just got stuck in a loop. I don't know if you like to have multiple problems, but I like to see what it's like if just one problem really takes me down. And so I got neck pain. If you're waiting for that story to become interesting, unfortunately it will not. I got neck pain, which became more pain, which became more pain. And before I knew it, I got stuck in a loop and I couldn't get out. And I guess I realized how often I had heard that from other people, where it's not so much like the urgent nature of their, like we sometimes have these acute moments of crystallized highs and lows. And then the rest of the time, it seems like we mostly just have a problem that is simultaneously so urgent and so boring that when we tell someone who loves us, you can see the sort of like loving glaze of being like, yes, this is the 40th time.
And they say still?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Still.
And like that, I think that's, I've always, in things where I couldn't get out, I would try to remind myself like life is a chronic condition. But I guess I didn't realize the kinds of qualities it would take for the ongoingness of life.
Well, I think that's part of maybe what really struck me about the book is that it's not just that something happens, it's that they keep happening.
It's like, it should be the subtitle podcast, like everything happens and again,
keeps on
happening.
So I guess the question then is, what do we do then? When it's not just one moment in time that is an experience and then it's done and dusted.
Yeah.
But it is your actual lived reality. It is the thing that you get up with and live with every day.
Yeah.
It just keeps happening.
You know, Sarah, I think that's probably when we became super friends, is when I realized that you were one of the only friends that I had who understood chronic pain.
Yeah.
And also the desire to still I guess like, I mean, because we're always trying to figure out like, what is my life for? And especially in those awful moments, you're like, no, but like, what is it for now? Like, isn't actually like, I'm not really gonna be able to do much in a day.
Yeah.
And I remember calling you and being like, well, this bag of Jello and car parts is not. Actually, I think you said something like horrifyingly poetic. You said,
I think I don't remember what I said.
you said,
I know what I said, I'm just wondering if I should say it on there.
Yeah. Well, it was, you said it's hard to love the stone that drowns you. That's true. And I think there's these moments where like you're carrying a lot, but then it does get heavier over time. And then when somebody comes along and is like, but B, they're using this voice.
Yeah, sounds like a smile.
I wonder how much of your writing has come out of the chronicness of your life.
I think probably a significant amount, maybe an amount that I'm not really entirely sure about yet. I think because it does shift everything in your perspective to all of a sudden be that, I guess in that world or that lane, it's amazing how much clarity and also how much resentment you can have at the same time. Yes, which can show up sometimes in those spaces. But I think that it's something that has made me hyper aware of those of us who are part of that company of people with unanswered prayers. And that there's a lot more of us than I think maybe a lot of Jesus-y books and conferences would maybe admit. And so when we find each other, it just feels like
But the music swelled, Sarah. This is our moment.
I have a charismatic background. I'm here for a chord progression. All the time. Put 3 tambourines in a room and I will.
I'm here for a chord progression. It's so funny. The thing that I can hear too in other people is like the kid that can't quite launch, and then the story feels fresh and also old, and also you're smart, and if there was an easy solution, you would have figured it out by now.
Right.
And then all the people who run into you casually who say, have you tried?
Yes. Or have you read?
Or I researched. There's a lot of research. Google has been quite the gift to do researchers. AI is surely going to be the next great gift. But it is wild, because like the have you tried, the feeling like you should have figured it out by now, the sense that you kind of don't even want to bring it up again because they know it, you know it, but it's still not okay.
Not even I'm sick of it sometimes. Like,
yes, totally.
Right? So of course I'm understanding if other people are sick of it at the same time too.
I think that's part, because sometimes I can't tell if I don't. I mean, I know it seems like I talk about my problems a lot, but the truth is I only write about my problems.
This is true.
I try not to talk about them because I can feel how boring I am. I am. It gets aggressive. Yeah. But with this book, I really only had about 1 hour of clear brain space.
You did.
And the rest was me in a slow de-evolution throughout the day. And by 4 p.m., I was just like lying in a bathtub, hit my pain medication max, was just waiting. I had tried to establish a monogamous relationship with my healthcare provider, Kathy, for a very reasonable $20 copay. But Kathy never just wants you to see her. Kathy needs you to see Kyle or Trevor. And that's $55, but Trevor doesn't have an appointment. And you're just trying to make it through. And by the time you see Kyle or Trevor, you're like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, no, really, what's going on with you? And you're like, no, I really kind of thought that was your job. And I was just waiting to get to this appointment. But now we're talking about my multivitamin for 20 minutes. And the feeling that you can do that days and weeks, and actually for an entire life of not being able to solve your own problem. I can hear it when people say that in their relationship, they can hear themselves say, well, you always. And a therapist will never let you say, but like he really always does do that. And someone needs to let you finally say it. Tell a friend. But you can tell him when you have that fight tomorrow. But I think it's the ongoingness of life that is like requires more courage than I realized.
I think that's one of the things that I'm noticing a lot, maybe, I don't know if it's just post-pandemic, or maybe it's even some of it's like the enthusiasm of a new year, which God bless them. But there's even this dynamic of like, you can self-help your way out of this.
Yes.
You can self-help your way out of being a person.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a cure to being human.
Did you know?
Yeah, it's goop. Mostly. It's like a dry brushing regimen. Sarah and I were like, is it essential oils anymore? It's like, no, it's dry brushing now. So, yeah, it's always one woman in a banjo just wants to show you her dry brushing routine. And I'm like, that'll do it. Yeah.
I wouldn't be down. So I guess the question I have then is, because we've bumped up so often on the limitations of self-help, and being able to, like, I don't know, act like there's a key to turn in a lock, and if we just keep trying keys, sooner or later it'll turn.
Yeah.
What do you think is the effect on us from that?
Yeah.
From the constant throwing yourself at a closed door, even at times.
Yeah, and I mean, we just escaped January, right?
Yeah.
And we barely.
Oh God, it went on
It's
forever.
so weird because like Jesus is being born for a second, right, at Christmas, and then we turn a hard corner, and then it's just self-hatred for a whole month. And then I'm always so relieved when we round the corner on Lent because I'm like, back in my wheelhouse. Sad time again.
Let's be sad together.
But then it was the same day as Valentine's Day, so that was very awkward.
Everybody contemplated their mortality.
We sent out these like pretend Valentines that were like, I can't remember who they were. They were just like, happy Valentine's Day, we're all gonna die. It was like from ash to ash. I'll love you forever. I'm giving up sweet things, so I'll see you after Easter. It was just crap like that. We thought it was so funny. But it's hard to find a place to ground an experience of progress, especially because the self-help and wellness industry is a $12 billion a year industry. So if you have the lingering sense, and especially women, if you have the lingering sense that you are failing right now, that you have not.
That makes you a good customer.
It really does. Yes, you're just one ritual away from eating yourself, loving yourself, budgeting yourself, organizing yourself. If it's not like how our dishes are stacked, it's our skincare routine and then do you love how like, was it Simplicity, Meg? What was it called again?
Real Simple.
Real Simple. Real Simple's annual, they publish like how much do you have to make to subscribe to this magazine. My favorite was Real Simple magazine, had like the average income was $120,000. I was like, oh, that's simple. You just hire for that. I got it. It does leave us in a very painful place because I think what our culture has rightly understood about us is that inside of a day, we're desperate for that small feeling of purposeful activity.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt it when I just had like, gosh, if I have 1 hour, what do I do with my 1 hour so that I can feel like the dignity of effort? It feel like when I see a woman do a pull-up in the gym, it's just you and your tambourine. It's just open tears because it's really emotional to see anybody try.
Yeah.
And so they know that we want to try. They just so easily make a million off-ramps onto expensive and painful forms of like unwinnable experiments. How can you master this project called the self?
Yes, I think that's one of the things that maybe struck me most about this book was that it almost created a pathway for spiritual practice for those of us who are kind of, I don't know, mapless, but also exhausted. Yeah. Right? And so I guess I was wondering if that's the case, what if it's not this, and that's not to like crap all over self-help, because I've gotten a lot from it. I know you have too. Like you can recognize the limitations while still, having that understanding. And yet there's this part of me that is craving almost like that hopefulness of spiritual practice.
Yeah.
And you keep circling around that. You keep coming back to things like prayer and blessings and benedictions and speaking truth. And there's an element of like dogged stubbornness to it that I love. And so I'm wondering about the spiritual practices that are strong enough for that reality,
Yeah.
right? The one that is not, and I mean, again, you and I know, like, so for those of you who aren't aware, I come from a word of faith or a prosperity gospel background where, yeah, I mean, that's a whole steamer trunk of baggage to unpack. At a certain point, I'm 5 books in and I'm not done, talking about it. But there can be this sense of if you pray the right words, if you do the right things, if you follow the formula. And so then when that isn't working anymore, you're left being like, well, is this the extent of my spirituality, is attempts at controlling God?
Yes.
And controlling outcomes, even for myself. And so learning to find spiritual practice, whether it's prayer, whether it's, companionship.
I kind of want to ask you, because so her book.
No, this is your
She has a journal that goes with it, which is this thing. So Sarah, like, what are your things?
No, that's not what
I
we're
know.
doing.
She's Enneagram 9ing me hard right now, and I
Don't underestimate the stubbornness. Don't underestimate it. So how about this? You go first.
Okay.
And then I'll conveniently forget to answer.
Okay. The truth is, I do feel like you're better on this than I am, but I will try. Well, because I guess this is the area in which I have been the most embarrassed and reluctant, because
that's interesting.
Well, as a person who has been attempting to wear velvet blazers and surround myself in many books, I have such a high trust in specialization. And so if you ask me, I'm like, well, I'm a historian, and please let me answer with, it was the late 19th century. But it was the late 19th century. I do have more I'd like to say on that. But it was, and I'd spent so long studying this shared mutual interest in the promises that God wants to give you health, wealth, and
I've enjoyed being one of the animals in the zoo for you.
You're like,
case study.
Layers. Yeah. But I guess it was so much easier for me to study #blessed than it was for me to come up with what the more honest version was. And it really is dumb that it took me truly years and probably 3 books to go from #blessed to blessings. And I was like, I couldn't possibly. But I think it feels vulnerable to try. And I didn't want to feel the embarrassment of the kind of spiritual honesty that I was looking for. Because my prayers were kind of more like, dear God, this is garbage. Most of this is a design flaw. Best wishes. And I was like, sincerely, best regards. So that felt like I wasn't sure. And also I'm in a culture that doesn't really reward a lot of spiritual experimentation on that front. I remember the first time I didn't include like a Trinitarian roundout at the end of a prayer. At Duke Divinity School, I hope you're watching this. But they were like, woo. And I was like, guys, I'm not sure where this is going. But so it has been hard for me to kind of pray my way into the things that I hope will carry my life. But I think what just happened was I got really desperate. And the more desperate I got, the more honest I got. The more honest I got, the more I was willing to just try.
Well, for sure. I think that's one of the things that maybe was a bit of a reset for both of us, was realizing you get to be a whole person with God, right? That there's not parts of myself that I have to edit out when it comes to prayer, or it comes to honesty, or it comes to connection with people. Like, it turns out you get to be a whole person and you get to bring all of it, which is remarkable that at nearly 45, that was like a revelation. It's like, well, you get to be a person. But I think that's one of the things that maybe we run into often in terms of like the pressure to be positive, the pressure to be chipper. And I know that some of this might be even like, depending on kind of the backgrounds that we come from and the places where we are. But like from a background like mine, where it's like I don't really know what to do with being someone who's chronically sick, when just even from a language perspective and the backgrounds and the places where I came up, it's like you were never sick, you were coming down with a healing. Not upsetting at all. And so being able to have spaces and language that you've given to people like us, to name those things and to have that reality, to be someone who speaks truth. And I think in some cultures, like maybe sometimes what we found ourselves, it will always feel like a bit of a prophetic act to say what's true.
Yes.
And so what element has truth telling been in terms of your spiritual practice, or in terms of even how you've engaged with this season of I don't know, not just pain, but also like the effort and the trying that you're always kind of moving towards?
Yeah. Well, I guess I was trying to, because on the question of language, it took me a bit to come up with words that I even wanted.
Right.
And like, there's two terms that I felt like I could like put a lot of weight on. And one was that there had to be a thing between everything is possibilism and then the immediate American fear that we will descend into the tar pits of despair. I mean, they're positive that if Joel Osteen is not telling you that everything is possible, or like a woman with a book called The Universe Has Your Back, that people will immediately slide down into sudden despair. And like, but of course, the tar pits of despair are there for all of us. My dad has a really cute song he sings in the morning, which I'm going to tell you right now. Then it goes, go Jerry, go Jerry, go Jerry, go. And I sing the same song to myself because every day is like, go, 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 try, 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 but it can't be everything. So then what is it? And then I think it's limited agency is what is possible inside today. When you, for the moment your eyes wake up and you have to will yourself into life, what can you reach for? And limited agency offered me a lot more traction than the fears that I had about an everything or nothing. And the other term that I kind of fell in love with was, I was reading, I was reading, you know, like Niebuhr brothers and their very sort of magisterial view of Christian history.
Yeah, clearly I'm very well familiar. They're smarter than me.
Not true. I love you.
I have a communications degree from Oral Roberts University. What are you all doing here? Keep going. Neighbor from Winnipeg.
I officially love you more. Well, they have this way of saying that the Christian life was somehow a series of predictabilities, and you just had to sort of establish a worldview and then live inside of it. And then they would describe, the word was like precarity, that feeling of things being given and taken away, and that delicate experience you have of life being constantly just brittle, like someone pulls a thread and then you're just not wearing a sweater anymore. And except that one man over there won't give me his sweater, and it's the greatest sweater I've ever seen. And I just want you to know. He's given up.
Now that you've publicly shamed him, he's willing to give.
But it's but they always describe precarity as a kind of like it was the thing to be overcome.
Yeah.
And it was really lovely. I read this series of letters from Dorothy Day, who was that apparently very bad mood Catholic social activist, 20s and 30s.
Some grouchy things.
She was not cute, and I like that even more. But she
for Instagram reels of Dorothy Day.
Exactly. So she described precarity as not the thing that had to be overcome, but it was like the world inside which faith and life must live. And so like, what are we? I mean, we're a little delicate, and every attempt at doing otherwise is usually just a season, a season of, I mean, if you're in a gorgeous season right now, like, bless you. That is a beautiful thing. And if you can do unironic mountaintop yoga in a safe way, I want that for you so much. And especially we can tell when we're having that wind at our back feeling. And that's a beautiful time to be like, gosh, like you look at someone who loves you and you feel the like absurdity of your life, and you just be like, great, blessed. You can even hashtag blessed it and tag me, and I will thumbs up you so hard. But if you're in a season of overwhelming caretaking, if you're in a season where you don't yet know how truly lovable you are, like those are the ones that are so poisoned with the fear of despair that makes all pain feel the same. And that's the great lie of depression and every other thing that like creeps around the edges of our lives, anxiety, everything, is that all terrible things will last forever. And so that's why we need the daily little song to make life, to make not life, to make that day beautiful.
Exactly, kind of like just bringing it down a little bit.
Way down. Yeah, so far down.
Welcome. What did you learn tonight? Lower your expectations.
If my father-in-law were here, he'd be like, I told you to lower your expectations. I've been saying it the whole time. What do you think our faith is built on? This is so great. Every minute in my life is like, bring it all. With what's for us,
also it'll be chased by a potluck.
Do you have any flat rack furniture? Let's get at it. Get her batter.
We're starving you all later. Don't act like I didn't go to MCC today. Here, Winnipeg.
And you can tolerate one spiritual question, so you're like it.
No,
We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. In your journal that you wrote, which I'm gonna Tobin is my husband, and I'm forcing him to do Sarah's journal every day.
What a lucky duck.
How did you figure out how you wanted to do but what do we do inside of a day? Because that's a real kind of question of discernment, I think a lot about.
It is, and I think that that's kind of where, I was curious about at this point was the question of like, what now?
Yeah.
Or what do you do with this now? And so, in terms of whether you want to call it like faith deconstruction or, I tend to like the term evolving faith. So it lets me bring along all the weirdness I still love. And so tambourines. But there was a sense of like, what are the actual practices, like the actual things that I can maybe throw myself at right now, or just kind of structure my life around when it feels like God is disappearing like steam on a mirror after you open the door after a shower, like it's just gone, every answer you ever had. And so then what? What is it that you want to question? What are the things you want to remember? What are the things you need to release and let's sink to the bottom? Those were some of the questions that to me came more from the view of maybe practices. Yeah. I think because maybe I'm a little burned out about like the word spiritual disciplines because it felt so brandished and weaponized. And whereas practices seems to imply to me like I'm not good at it yet, but I'm doing it. Yeah. Right? There's that element to it. And one of the things that ended up happening, one of the main things that kind of threw me over the threshold into faith deconstruction was like sustained pregnancy loss, miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage. And then I was doing like a book event or something years later, and this very well-meaning person in the line said to me, don't you just thank God for that now? Because look at the ministry that has developed on the other side of that. Are you not thankful now for that? And I've heard similar things since my car accident in 2017, like this made you who you are now. This changed things about you. And that's true, it did profoundly change me. But that's a sucky thing to say. And so that's the spiritual way of explaining that. So in naming a book something like Have a Beautiful, Terrible Day, and being in text conversations with you that would probably get us both canceled by, well now. The question is, how do you approach things like that? When people say things like that to you, are you not thankful for, or did it not make you who you are now?
Yeah.
Or do you not, like, they're eager for you to like wring the meaning out of suffering for them and make it worthwhile so that they can feel better.
Yeah.
And so what do we do with that? Or what's that instinct in us towards that? And then how do you make room for the beautiful and the terrible?
I think that is probably the most interesting thing to think about, because when you talk with somebody, like, the beautiful magic of people sharing their actual life experience, if we don't take the shortcut and just use the cliche, what we find between people is there's this distillation of this little precious glittering gem of wisdom. And I find that people just, if you listen for long enough, they'll give it to you, and it's great. Like, for instance, on the how do you make meaning without saying these horrifying and reductive things. There was 2 things people said to me in the last 6 months. One was Beth Moore, the lovely Beth Moore, said, my prayer is, because I've gone through this really just terrible thing, and I think, wow, it really wasn't worth it. But my prayer is, but God, could you make it matter? And I thought that's kind of a lovely way of thinking about how we're in our lives trying to find that golden thread that says, like, what part of this is still telling the story of who I am? And then I really liked, Rabbi Steve Leder said, well, if you're gonna go through hell, may as well not come out empty-handed. And I thought that was like the 2 sides of the same lovely thought, is like, in all these things, if it can't be the shortcut, if we have to take the long road through life, like, can we make it matter? Can we say the truer thing, even though it makes people feel like very uncomfortable at the party? And you can hear your voice because you're already telling that the story is upward and your voice gets higher. And now you're really hoping someone will interrupt you. Oh, it's too late. You said it. So just letting ourselves, I think this is why there's just a couple things we're trying to do. There was, I never preach ever because I'm not good at it, but the lovely St. Margaret's Church forced me to preach, and thank you guys, we're so great. And it was a sermon on, it was like all the text was about idolatry, and I'm like, I am going to have to read other things. But so I read all this literature about idolatry. And one of the things was like, well, then what is it? And having been so obsessed with self-help, I was trying to figure out, like, well, is that idolatry? Is that we take, it's just like the shiny, glittery thing? And then I thought it settled in a nice way, which is that, like, idols are just beautiful things that don't transform us. So when we try to, like, just make the quarter turn away from the faster cliche, the party trick, I think we'll say something slower and harder and truer. And I know that that's work that we do because people love us and they want to hear it.
One of the things that I've grappled with over the last number of years, period, I think just on a personal level, but then I think even on like a communal level, or the things that we've been grappling with as communities, is what's the role of hope in all of this?
Yeah.
Is it worth contending for hope? Is hope unfair? Is it something that I'm leaning on and really just actually spiritual bypassing, which you taught me that term?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, you're very smart.
That's a good one. Yeah, thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Are we so dumb? Like, don't we forget things that we figured out like a year ago?
When you say so many things, I can't be held accountable for all of them.
And a friend will be like, well, you taught me that. You're like, that does not sound familiar. That was not me for sure.
So my question then is, what have you found about the role of hope right now, when things are both beautiful and terrible?
Yeah.
Not just, and for a lot of us, the totality of that is held within our bodies or within our families and within the stories that we are living right now. And yet there's also these larger stories that are happening around us and in us and through us and that are affecting us. And I mean, just we're all kind of carrying and grappling with that right now. What does hope mean now? Is it worth contending for? Or has that shifted for you?
I guess I kind of, because when I was very, very sick, people who wanted a lot of, you know when people like really just want you to like prove a worldview that they're very stressed about. And you're like, oh, I'm not a person, I'm an example right now.
Yeah. The object lesson.
Yeah, and I guess like I always struggled to answer because I always felt like when they were talking about hope, they were talking about like ultimate hope or heaven or things like that. And wasn't I going to be so thrilled about it? I was like, people say it's our true home. Would you like to go first? So I don't know. I guess when I thought about hope in like a big way, like I guess maybe hope is like loops. Like when I think about the longest loop, I just think about God and love as like an anchor dropped in the future and just like pulling us toward it. If I think of the longest loop. But the shortest loop, I used to kind of wonder how to be, and I think we feel this all the time when we have a friend who is really going through something, or we're not really sure how, or even just like something small, but we're not sure how hopeful to be. We're like staring at their face, being like, do you want the job? Do you want me to be excited or not as less excited? As excited as you are. High voice, low voice. And I think of faith, I mean, as hope more as like pace setting. It's that person that's like a half a step, like when marathon runners really just want to run in pairs, or a more prairie metaphor, trucks shifting down the highway, forcing your car into air pockets. But like we want to feel, if we can have a person that's just a tiny bit ahead, pulling us forward, because I mean, if we change it to like volume, if you turn up hope way too loud, it sounds insane and surreal. And also like they're probably not really paying attention. Like, and then I'll be the Pope? Like what would happen? What would happen in your scenario, Linda? You know, you're not listening. But then it's too far down and you also feel the encroachment of worry or despair or anxiety. You're like, whoa, wait a minute. What do you think is gonna happen to me? They need to be like, slightly, I think hope in the form of love, it takes our gaze right at that, like the place right in front of our feet, and just pulls us a little up so that we can see where we're going and also just feel our own goodness. Like wouldn't it be lovely if we believed the best true things about ourselves? Wouldn't that be such a freaking relief? If like all the true things that we actually, when a friend says to us, we go like, oh, thanks. And we just feel it in our own hearts. Aren't we kind of beautiful? Aren't we kind of like pretty lovable? Aren't we sort of great listeners to that one really boring person that we can think of if we pause right now? I think that person deserves to feel the possibility of hope without feeling like they got stuck in a self-help carpet. Which is a whole, McNally, you have a very small self-help carpet section. I want you to know that those, I like that John is probably behind this placard right now.
I'm accepting all credit.
Never leave me, John. This is how I want to make all my choices. How did you decide? Because you lead a, so Sarah has this really, she's been doing this for such a long time, is like leading communities of people who are not sure how to be hopeful. Like, especially people who've been hurt by institutions, people who want to feel the beauty of their faith and hope and love without feeling like they're just about to be like pulled into a trap. And so I bet hope is probably one of the most like precious commodities that you hold.
I think, I remember so we ended up having like a lot of kids in a short amount of time. And I remember when they turned like collectively, you know, when they hit that age where they started going to school, and I remember feeling like my head was facing down for years and years. And then all of a sudden I went like this and was like, oh, there's people out here.
Okay there.
And sometimes cultivating hope has felt like that for me, where it gets very particular and very homey and very rooted in my actual life with actual people.
Yeah.
And so cultivating hope has been kind of the way that I've looked at it, as opposed to either you have it or you don't.
Oh, that's nice.
And so it's not necessarily something that's like a gift that some people are given and other people are denied, or even that it's something that that you don't have to contend for, which is actually maybe akin to the word you were using about like the dignity of trying. You know, coming from the background I come from, I love like big, juicy religious words like apocalypse, which we're currently in one. Yeah, it's great. But also things like that, like cultivating hope, because then it almost seems to me like something that very small choices or small movements do matter and do move me in that direction. They keep my eyes up instead of just consumed with whatever thing is there. There's this element to it that is like undeniably foolish.
Yes.
And that's the part that I really love. I know people like words like faithfulness, and I think they're helpful. I prefer stubborn. I like the idea of being really stubborn for the Lord. And hanging on and those kinds of things. And one of the things that I am kind of stubborn about is the idea of blessing the experience of being a person. That this is not, we are not the problem. And that being a person is not the problem, that suffering or having pain or experiencing loss, having a broken heart is sometimes the bravest thing that we can possibly manage. And so one of the things that kind of turns people's heads around about the work that you do is this idea of blessing things that seem unblessable, right? The very things that other people are wanting to kind of skip past or pretend aren't there or silver lining our way out of. And speaking from experience, I mean, nobody can find a silver lining better than I can.
Are you like that reflexively?
Oh God, it's awful.
You're like, actually, it was probably pretty good.
Listen, this is grim.
I can hear myself always like, I love McDonald's. That's what people are talking about.
I was never more delighted in my life than to go to Applebee's with you tonight.
It's true. This is what I do for the people I love. It's like, would you like to go to Applebee's?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll eat all the fries.
But so many of the little, I'm sorry to be the person that like refers to myself. But because at the end I was trying to put these little like, but then how to, that feeling of like lifting your head up.
That's where I was trying to steer you. So
Oh, sorry.
there.
But I was trying. Well,
It's nice to know I'm not necessarily. It's fine.
Because some of them are like, Jessica would tell you just to eat a banana and take a walk. I mean, that's not very inspirational, but it's true.
No,
I mean, sometimes you just need to like get out of your own brain and eat a banana and take a walk. But some of it is just the feeling of like, how do you, one of my very best friends in the world, Chelsea, is here. And like, there's 200 references to you, by the way, in this book. Guys, I'm really sorry. There's so much Winnipeg in this book. There's so much naming people because I'm obsessed with you. I really am. And I'm sorry. But like, reflection prompt. I have a spectacular friend named Chelsea. And we've known each other since we were in an elementary school judo class. We are true witnesses to each other's lives. And so we are ever talking about what goes on the list. The list is our shorthand for saying what experiences really count. When something lovely happened, did it go on the list? When someone, not here is, when someone really makes a huge mistake in your life, did that go on the list? So let's do a bit of spiritual homework, friend. Let the next good thing that happens to you really count. Let it be part of the story of how loved you really are. It's been nice to kind of like I don't think I'd be the take a minute person to say like, how do we, because meaning is happening to us all the time, but how do we take a moment to assign it to the absurdity of a single day? Do you have stuff that you recommend when you're like, I want to do a thing to help notice my life more? What are your main go-tos?
You know, yeah, I think one of the things that began for me right at kind of like the white hot center of everything was being so overwhelmed by the idea of like loving it, right? Or even just like that you're supposed to love the world. And I was like, listen, have you seen the world? No. And one of the things that began to shift for me, I think especially was recovering from surgery at the time, and lockdowns were just starting, and I had this kind of catch to say, well, I can't love things in general.
Yeah.
I can't love the big wide thing that's happening right now, but can I love something in particular?
That's so good.
And so that kind of became one of the spiritual practices that has stayed with me for years now, to be able to say, I can't maybe love everything, but I can love this in particular, and pay attention to that, or name it, or notice it, put it on the list.
Yeah.
Chelsea, which by the way, I made Chelsea my friend too after reading all the things about you in these last little while. Chelsea ordered me a breadstick tonight. It was great. It's on the list. My breadstick with Chelsea is on the list. But that idea of like not in terms of like scorekeeping or building like some cosmic balancing scale, like somehow that will make things more worthwhile, but more in the sense of it does make me love things more.
Yes.
It makes me notice the freckles on my daughter's face. It makes me notice the way that the tree in the backyard is shifting. It makes me notice where the sun is at every day as we move closer and closer to the light. It makes me realize that maybe I have a huge amount of problems with the body of Christ as a whole right now, because what a nightmare. But these particular people who love Jesus, I love this. And I can see possibility and hope in this. And maybe I can't see everything that will be moving forward, but this in particular is enough that I can hang on to this until maybe the light breaks.
I really like that, hon. I really like that too, when I think about all the people here who have like a version of that that's their vocation. Like, what are they being called to right now?
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't, I don't know, like we start being a nurse and then 30 years later we're like, oh, are we still a nurse? Is this like, I felt the weirdness of that when I thought it was gonna be like the last year of my life, but then I was like, I'm a historian. That means that if I were gonna keep doing that, I'd have to go into a library and absolutely dismantle an entire wall of books called Charisma, like magazines called Charisma magazine. And I'd have to scan them individually with a guy in the copy room named Jared. And that's what I would do with my one wild and precious life.
Mary Oliver would approve. Her answer was to go and look at ducks. So I think she'd approve if you went in the stats with Jared.
I think that what helped me though is actually, sorry Dad for picking on you so much today, but it was something
Heavy
that was
sigh.
like, I will kill you on the way home if you even are allowed into my car. But watching my dad love the absurdity and beauty of history as a gift that he could, like a little treasure box. And the constant love he had, if it was either like teaching or going with me to see the world's largest Noah's Ark in Kentucky, built by an Australian man with $100 million.
There is the despair that's validated.
You know, Manitoba has more world's largest things than any other province. No, I know, huge win. Watching him love the particularity of the thing that genuinely was a lifelong gift, it helped me realize that, like, even if you're not really even sure what you're gonna do with your wild and precious days, maybe it is doing exactly what you were called to do a very long time ago, long before you even really remembered why you keep doing it. And I guess I hear that a lot from, because almost we both have these like communities we get to be a part of. One of the distinctive qualities of the community that I have is they pick really emotionally expensive lives. Like, they're either caring for other people, they picked a job that was like required them to care again for no other reason except that they happen to be a really good person, or they've gone through something in which they realize, ugh, we're gonna have to care about other people.
Yeah.
So they care more about other people than any people I have ever met. And then they keep choosing to do it. And then they go, because we all do it, am I gonna burn out? And the answer is, I mean, yeah, we do. And then we reabsorb all of the love that is. But I think that's, I don't know, so when I heard your question about like finding the, I was thinking, I think they probably, like I did with this feeling in a library stack, was like, maybe the lovely thing is to continue to do what you were called to do long after you forget exactly why you're always doing it.
It's true. I had this moment when my kids were little, where we used to let them sleep out on like the back deck of our house. My bedroom window was right there, and so they would like throw their sleeping bags and they would sleep out there at night. And I'd have my window open so I could hear them or anything, but anyway, I'll just say, don't come and get my child, and they were fine. Put all the boundaries around all the things. But anyway, they were out there on the deck one night, and it was in the middle of the night, and I heard them wake up and start to talk to each other. And so I got up out of bed and I kind of padded out to the kitchen and looked through the back door to the deck. And I realized that they were all looking up at the sky. And they were probably like 6, 8, and 10, like just little. And I realized that they were looking up at the sky, and it was no light pollution. It's beautiful. You can see the Milky Way. So I stood there. I didn't interrupt them. Sometimes not interrupting your kids when they're having a moment is like a whole part of parenting that nobody ever told you about. You don't have to force meeting on things. They find it on them all by themselves.
We're having a great time, right?
You know, right? Let's get a lesson. No. But my eldest daughter, they were quiet in the face of all this beauty and all this wonder. And she said, I can't believe we always sleep through this. That's beautiful. And I felt that way moving through my life when so much of it got small and disappeared. And the things that I used to come easily to me disappeared and were gone. Even not just from a sickness perspective, but even, you know, from a faith perspective, losing a faith community that meant a lot to me. Losing a sense of community and belonging. You know, I can't believe I slept through some of those things. And so when those moments of beauty happen, I wonder if maybe that's part of it, and maybe why I get resentful when people kind of use that language of, well, doesn't this make it worth it? Because, well, now you see the beauty in things, and now you appreciate all the things. It's like, well, first of all, stand back, I'm going to vomit. Second of all, there's this sense of like, but then that cheapens what gift was there, what golden thing was there, what stars showed up because it was dark, the people who you learned you could count on, the good listeners, even though I droned on and on, you know, or whatever else it was. And so I think those moments of finding that, carving out that space like you've done between everything is possible and everything is doomed, feels a lot like that to me, of not everything's beautiful, but not everything's terrible. And so have a day, you know, which is kind of what you've done, right? And that sort of permission means that you are actually allowed to be human, which feels like such a gift right now, when it feels like we're supposed to be not, or better than.
I always feel bad because, like, I know with our books that they get put into a big publication machine that's like, I'm sorry, what was that about? So we gave them have a beautiful, terrible day. You could tell there's just one sweet young person who was just like, do you want me to have a good day? It's just like, I was like, and then you're like, oh no, may all your days be lovely. But when they can't, may it be a beautiful, terrible day.
What is the response? I know we're getting close to time and we need to let everybody go, but what is the thing that when someone is finished with the book, when they have wept over it and dog-eared pages like I have, when they have taken pictures with their phone and sent it to their sister, you know, or whatever else they're doing, what is it that you want people to carry away from it, from those pages and from that time?
That's nice. Well, I guess there's just only, I only really ever say, I only really hope for the same things. Like, I just hope for so much love. I hope that love is just everywhere. And if it's not right now, I want everyone to be able to, like, in that moment, take out a photograph and remember love behind them. And then on a good day, take out a calendar and then think about love in front of them. I want so much love for people. I want them to know that, like, they're also incredibly lovable. And that most of the world will try to like leach out the color in that. But they are just technicolor lovely. And I got very confused about that when I felt ridiculous and sick and small. And I made a rule where when I go to the mall, that I'm not allowed to look at a single commercial or billboards. I made a rule where instead of looking at everything that was outside of me and so seamless and perfect and beautiful and Instagrammy, that I would look at it not a single bit longer and I would just look at people's faces. Because when I feel like whatever it is in my life is the only thing that's ever been happening, I just find it's kind of insane. Like the way somebody is always tucking the hair behind someone else's ear and like giving a cute little nudge or saying the lovely thing, like we really are so beautiful. And then I just want courage. I want everyone to know that they feel scared because it's scary. And there's nothing wrong with them for saying that they are fearful. And you can be faithful and fearful at the same time.
It's a whole word.
So courage is you are unbelievably courageous, and you are courageous even when you feel afraid, and maybe especially then. And then I really want the unsexy stuff, which is also what you want, which is interdependence. I want everyone to be like, oh, going and trying to do it by myself was also a terrible plan, even though it's incredibly convenient to do it by yourself. And I had I dedicated the book to this wildly uncharismatic man named Roger. Roger and I shared a printer and a historical division meeting once a week. And Roger was like, no muss, no fuss, no smiles for me, thank you. No thinking my jokes were funny, no just like banter in the hallway. Roger was getting it done. Roger ran the library. And Roger was also the very first person to sign up constantly every single week at 4 a.m. to take me to the airport for medical treatment in a state far away. And I would get in the car, and then he would tell me very quickly to stop talking to him and that I was tiring myself out.
Someone who's like, please stop being charming. First of all, it's not working. Second of all, you need your energy.
And then I was just like reclining in his seat. But it's because the world is really full of saints. And those are just people who decide that they're willing to be bored so that other people have enough room for their problems. And when Roger died this last year, I have decided that there is just a cog in the machine that runs the universe that is missing. And actually, I thought about the communities that I've had here and my sweet Church of the Way and all the people who signed up to do dumb errands for me in my life because my life was so interesting. It really was not. So the world is in desperate need of all of your dumb errands. So thank you for loving and taking care of each other. None of us are going to be that interesting. All of us will have incredibly urgent, terrible, pressing, wonderful, awful problems. And all of them will be worthy of love. So, Sarah, Bessey, thank you, my darling. I am so excited for on Tuesday. Field Notes on the Wilderness is coming out, my love. It feels so good to celebrate with you. You are a gift to all. You guys, thank you for making this a structurally difficult evening. And thank you to John, who's somewhere in a way that will frighten us.
The ghost of McNally Robinson.
You really
I am obligated to keep the gratitude going, so I'm going to ask you to applaud twice more, and then I have some exciting procedural notes for you all. So, to my left, Kate C. Butler, author of Have a Beautiful, Terrible Day. To my further left, Sarah Bessey, author of Field Notes for the Wilderness. And now, some very quick procedural notes. So we will ask you all to remain in place for one moment, and then we will transport Kate and Sarah from this space. Now, Kate was up at an incredibly inappropriate hour this morning to make sure that she could make it here and must return to her home planet. But we do have many signed copies of her books here at the store. She very kindly signed a pile just beforehand. And if you didn't get a copy of those, we also have these very handy signed Kate Bowler book plates, which we will have at the cash desk momentarily. I will have in my pocket. So please accost me or one of my fellow booksellers. We'll make sure one of these gets into your hand and into a book. Sarah will be hanging out to sign some books for you. So we'll be moving her to a table just beside our cash desk. I should point out that Field Notes for the Wilderness and its guided journal, as mentioned by Kate just now, is not even out yet. So you are actually one of the first audiences in the world to be able to get your hands on it. So please do, as soon as we've shifted over there, come get a copy of the book signed. Feel free to get a book signed before you pay for it. Please do pay for the book at some point this evening. We have them at the central cash desk, and we also have
I really want a copy.
I now have the unenviable task of following that up. So thank you so much, sir. So yes, please get a copy of the book either from our cash desk or get it at the signing table. Please pay for the book. There will be somebody wandering down the line with a post-it note to write down your name. This is not because we don't trust you to spell. It's just because that way you can spend more time chatting when you get to the table than spelling your name. If you'd like a picture and have your phone out and ready to go, then the colleague of mine will be right across and be able to take that photo for you. So many thanks to the Crown Publishing Group, so many thanks to Convergent Books, to Penguin Random House of Canada. Thanks again to Kate and Sarah, and to all of you. You're fabulous people. It's been lovely spending the evening with you. Have such a very good night. Take care, everyone.